GM. Welcome to Web3 Academy, your one trusted source to capitalize on the next big phase of the internet. Don't get caught in the hype cycle. I'm Jay Bird, joined by my co-host Kyle Reedhead, and we believe that on-chain consumer apps, real-world assets, and crypto payments are going to change the world. That's why we're carving a path for doers to confidently build and invest in Web3. Kai, welcome back, my man.
Feels good to be back. I'm happy to be live on an episode again.
You're off falling in love in Portugal. We're not going to talk about that on today's episode. Maybe we get that in the roll-up on Friday, I hope. Get some of the juicy goods. I saw a little bit of love on Instagram. I don't know if anybody knows, but Kyle's very much in love with his new girl. It's very exciting. Anyways, but you were also at Permissionless. Let's talk. How was Permissionless? What did you feel there? How are the vibes?
Yeah, Permissionless was great. I enjoyed it. I'm a nerd and I love all things blockchain, and that's what we talked about for 3 days straight. So it was great. I went to Permissionless in 2022, which was in May of 2022 in Miami. This one was in September 2023 in Austin, Texas. I would say the size was significantly different. Last year, there was a lot more people, something like 10,000. There was like a massive lineup around the building to register. This time around, not at all. You would easily notice that there was zero cultured, like NFT type, artistic type people there. It was all builders, founders, and then some finance bros. But honestly, it was great because there was no like fans there. It was just real builders. Lots of people just like, hey, here's what we need to get done for this to work. Let's get it done. And like just talking shop. So smaller, but the right people talking about the right things, rather than last time was a little bit of fluff and just excitement and hoorah. I enjoyed it overall, but it definitely wasn't the like big, hip, cool thing like it was last year. That's for sure.
You wrote a great article coming out of that, and that sort of tees up the theme for today, which are what are the three trends that we see coming for the rest of the year, for the rest of 2023. And it also, the reason we're doing this is for our listeners, we're always focused on two things. What's going to onboard the next big set of users, and where should you be focused in order to understand your investments? And when you follow trends, that really helps, right? These three trends both they're going to impact new users, and they're also going to impact the flow of capital and the flow of value that accrues on-chain. And so the three trends that we're going to talk about today are on-chain consumer apps or crypto consumer apps, depending upon who you ask, real world assets moving on-chain, and crypto payments are at an inflection point. Those are the three trends. Before we jump into those three trends though, Kai, speaking about crypto payments, we got something super exciting at Web3 Academy that is happening just this week as we move our business more on-chain. What is it? Drum roll. We are now accepting crypto payments.
We've put Jay's house on chain. No, crypto payments, you're right.
I would love to put my house on chain. We're accepting crypto payments. So why is this a big deal? Well, when you go to buy something using fiat, for most of us in North America, in the Western world, in the developed world, no big deal, unless you hold a lot of your capital, a lot of your bags are in crypto, and you don't want to move that back to fiat to buy something, right? So our intern, Raul, is the best example of this. I love how I call him our intern. He's not.
No,
we like to call him that.
Yeah.
Raul wanted to buy a ticket to a conference, and he didn't have enough money in fiat because most of his money is in crypto. So he bought it in crypto. Thankfully, they accepted crypto for that conference. And starting this week, we are now accepting crypto for the Web3 Investment Masterclass, which is a full masterclass to teach you how to invest in Web3. And you can now buy that masterclass in your crypto. And you know what? Because we want to celebrate this launch, if you buy it this week, we're going to give you 33% off. So that's 33% off the $250 regular price. Buy it this week in crypto. Links in the show notes. Very, very exciting.
And honestly, I just got back, so I don't know the answer to this, but I think you could buy in USDC as well as ETH. I'm not sure if we ended up allowing to buy ETH or not. But anyway, go check it out. And I think we accept on multiple chains, multiple L2s, and ETH mainnet. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm excited to allow crypto payments. We're also going to be, and this is a little bit, it's not alpha, but whatever. We're going to be allowing this for our membership for pro members in the near future. That's a whole different world because that's subscription based, but that's coming. We're going to be one of the first newsletters to ever do that. And so we're really, really excited for that. But we're starting off with the course. So yeah, if you've got some crypto and you want to learn how to make more crypto, then use your crypto to buy this course. And it's going to end up making you more crypto in a matter of months anyway. So it's an absolute no-brainer.
Holy meta. That was a real meta. Oh my God. Thanks for that. Okay. Speaking about being able to buy your membership and your subscription Onchain, let's just take a minute to hear from our sponsor, Paragraph, who is going to enable that in the next month. Modern newsletters are built on Paragraph. That's right. Paragraph is a brand new newsletter platform that combines the best parts of Web 2 and Web 3 to supercharge newsletters for both writers and readers. Build a community, not just an audience. Paragraph uses blockchain tech to allow readers to collect and own the words that matter to them. This takes reading a newsletter to the next level. With Paragraph, readers can mint, collect, and show off quotes from their favorite newsletters. This opens new possibilities like creators sharing revenue with fans. I also love their new feature, Paragraph AI. This integrates GPT-4 natively in Paragraph to create, edit, and improve your writing effortlessly with one click. And guess what? We at Web3 Academy are on board and have already moved our content over to Paragraph. We believe this is the future of newsletters because of the profound engagement it creates between creators and fans. So, whether you're a creator, writer, or an avid reader, it's time to check out Paragraph and capitalize on the opportunity of being early. All right, welcome back. Okay, Kai, let me just frame today's conversation for you. One thing that is very important for people to understand when new technology is being built is there is two main things that need to occur. First, the infrastructure needs to be built. Great example is the innovation of the car. Well, you couldn't just go build a car without the ability to build an engine. The reason that cars finally became possible was because we could create engines. We had this infrastructure that would enable the car to exist. All right. We're at that same moment on chain.
You also needed roads, right? The car was then made, but you couldn't do anything with it because you didn't have roads. So that's the other piece of infrastructure that's really important. You got to think about.
That's a great point. Yeah. And you needed all these different pieces of infrastructure. You probably needed a place to fill up with gas. You needed all these things. And we're at that point with crypto on-chain Web3 because we finally are at a point where the infrastructure is enabling the car to be built. It's enabling these things that are going to have mass market appeal, which is what we're talking about today, these three trends that we're really excited about for the rest of the year. But before we jump into these three trends, Kai, I just want to talk about this infrastructure. So what is the infrastructure? What has changed in 2023 that is enabling this on-chain summer, this friend tech, these big moments that are happening right now?
Yeah, sort of two things. One is, cheaper block space, right? You can't do a lot when you're using ETH mainnet, but when you use layer twos, when you use things like Solana, you can do a lot more, right? Things like friend tech can exist when it costs pennies to make a transaction or less than that versus dollars, right? It's a big, big difference. When it becomes pennies to make a transaction, companies can just pay for it. You don't even need to worry about gas at all. Now, not everyone's doing that, but you could do that. Like Reddit. Reddit's avatars are done on Polygon where they just pay for the fees. Same with Lens Protocol. It's done on Polygon. They just pay for the fees. So cheap block space was a big deal, but we wanted cheap block space that's still secured by Ethereum or something decentralized. And so L2s and the launch of L2s have really been a big kind of like thing that has allowed innovation to move forward because we now have good, cheap block space. So that's one key thing. Account abstraction is the next. When it comes to UX, especially for like on-chain consumer apps, especially for crypto payments, we got to get a lot of the crap crypto stuff that exists out of there, right? OX, blah, 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 blah. That's got to go. Having a specific wallet and signing like 3 transactions before you can make a payment. If you're trying to buy a coffee and you got to sign 3 times, that's not going to happen. That's got to go. If you want to use an app and post something or interact with something on chain, you have to sign a bunch of times, bridge, blah, blah, blah. like it's just not going to work. It'll work for the couple thousand of us nerds that are here in Web3. Doesn't work for anyone else. So all those things have to go, which is a long way to say account abstraction, which is the thing that gets rid of a lot of that, which is now, I mean, it's been the big push in 2023. It's now here in a lot of different ways. FriendTech is a lot of account abstraction. If you've used FriendTech, a lot of that is what we've been talking about with account abstraction, and it makes the UX much, much better. It's not perfect yet. Still lots to go. Jay and I are going to try and do a bunch of episodes in the coming months to help people understand how to use account abstraction and how to make a great UX in an app. But those two things are what allows us to go mainstream.
Okay. So we've got those two things. Before we jump into the three trends, just curious, what else is being worked on? You know, you said yourself that at Permissionless, it was a lot of builders, a lot of devs. Shout out to them, by the way. We're lost without you guys. Thank you for all your engineering minds. But what else are you seeing that is being worked on sort of more on that infrastructure layer that's coming that might impact the app layer?
I think one of the even bigger things is going to be even cheaper block space. So like Base, Arbitrum, Autism, they're all great, but it's still pennies to do a transaction. And when you want thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of transactions, like those costs still go up. And so like we have an upgrade coming to Ethereum early next year, 4844. That's going to probably reduce our fees by like 10x. So I think that's going to be really big. Then there's also this idea of, and we're seeing a lot just the past couple of weeks, this convergence of blockchains where L2s, you've noticed, are like using the Solana, the SVM, so the Solana virtual machine, and then using like Celestia for data availability, then Ethereum for the settlement. So like blockchains are sort of being unbundled, and then you're using each layer depending on the blockchain that has optimized to that layer. The reason that that's big is it really improves speed and costs even more, right? So using, let's say, the Solana virtual machine and then Celestia for data availability makes the transactions faster and cheaper than just a typical L2. Right. So, but then there's still have the settlement guarantees of Ethereum. So I think that is a trend we're going to continue to see, and it's going to just make blockchains faster, cheaper, et cetera, plus some of those upgrades that are coming. And then there's just UX stuff again. Account abstraction, still early days, but I think as that comes out more, we're going to really put everything underneath. Bridging, we need to improve that and abstract that away. It's still not here, but that's a big one we really, really need. Some wallet UX stuff can still have some improvements there. And then ZK. So once we get ZK proofs, I think this is going to be big for especially identity type stuff. Right now, everything on chain is public. Can't really have that for everything we do. Institutions aren't going to come on and just show you everything they're doing. So we need ZK to come in and fix a lot of that. And so that's going to be a really, really big unlock that's going to just give us so many more use cases. But all that's coming in the next, I don't know, year or so.
Frick, it's so exciting. And I think the one thing I just want to say here, today's episode, we're not going to dive deep down those things that Kyle just said, but those are all important. This idea of unbundling of blockchains, the idea of how to use account abstraction in order to achieve a great user experience, or if you're building an app, you have a Web2 company that's going to start to move on chain. We are going to make sure you guys understand all that in the future. So more to come on that. And if you want more on that, please let us know what you would like us to focus on, because we're definitely.
And the big thing to understand is just as more of those features get unlocked, it means more use cases can be possible on chain. That's all it is, right? And now with account abstraction and L2s, we have a bunch of use cases already that we can do, which we've seen with FriendTech and many more. And that's the first part we're going to get into, I think, which is on-chain consumer apps.
Okay, let's do that. Great segue, Kai. Let's talk about on-chain consumer apps. What is an on-chain consumer app, just so everybody understands? Basically, an on-chain consumer app is a normal app, just like you would use in Web 2. The only difference is it's the Web 3 mullet. It's got blockchain in the back. What does blockchain enable? Blockchain enables self-custody. It enables ownership. It enables permissionless tech, interoperable tech. So these are all the things that are basically taking your usual app and then allowing it to take this next step of digital ownership that we couldn't do in Web 2. Anything you want to add to that definition of an on-chain consumer app?
No, I mean, I think it's good. It's basically just any old app that happens to have blockchain underneath of it. The whole thing does not need to use blockchain, but part of it will use blockchain, and whether that's for owning shares of whatever FriendTech things, the keys, I guess they're calling them, or it's to do payments, or it's to just log in and have it like an ID. It can be many different things, but ultimately it's just normal apps, but we're using blockchain tech in the background to give self-custody and ownership.
Okay. You've talked about this already, but one of the reasons that on-chain consumer apps are here now, well, let me just actually directly ask you, why are on-chain consumer apps here now versus not in the past? What is making them more user-friendly?
I mean, well, the big thing is account abstraction L2s, but to be more specific, if you look at FriendTech, for example, this is the best one. Anyone listening right now, if you're going to build an app, you want to build an app, or you just want to understand this industry, and if you have not used FriendTech, look, I'm not saying FriendTech is the greatest thing in the world by any means, but go just use it because you'll see it's different than every other app that's out there for a few reasons. One, you don't see anything about gas fees. It's completely abstracted away every time you buy a key. Now, there are fees involved there, but you just don't see it. It's not a thing. The onboarding experience just requires either a phone number or an email, right? It's very normal to what you would do with any other app. It's very familiar, which is key. You don't need an existing crypto wallet at all. It actually makes one for you when you make your account. Okay. So when you give your email, your phone number, you're not also then creating a MetaMask wallet in a different somewhere else. It's just making one, which is again, account abstraction wallets right within the app. So your account, just like when you go into any Web2 app and you create an Amazon account, whatever, it's doing that for you, but it's creating it as a wallet, which means that you now own it and you can self-custody it. So that's really key. And then when you interact with on-chain things inside the app, you don't actually have to do like signing of transactions. There's no like thing that pops up and then it takes you to another app for your wallet to come. And then you got to like sign in there. And then that moves you back out of your wallet to the app. Like none of that exists. There is like, of course, when you click to buy, it just goes like, are you sure you want to buy this? Here's what's going to cost you. But that's the same as what you would never not have a pop-up when you're buying something in Web2 as well, of course. But in the Web2 world, you got to put in your credit card information and your email address and your address of where you live, et cetera, to make that payment go through. Here, you don't have to do that. It's because, remember, your account is a wallet. So it's actually a better experience than Web2 because you're just going, you sure you want to pay, $9 for this key? And you're just like, yep, done. And it happens immediately, right? So it's actually a better UX than Web2 in terms of like payments and things. But again, you're not moving out of apps and signing transactions like we typically have done in the past. So those are the big things that have made FriendTech what it is, outside of its like utility and like the funness of it, et cetera.
Okay, so what makes you think that more consumer apps are coming soon?
I mean, one, we're already seeing it, right? Like there's so many copies of FriendTech already. PostTech is another one that's doing quite well. But then we've talked on the show a bunch about like, rainmakers. So there seems to be a lot of like fantasy football type apps. Those would be considered consumer apps. And then just on base, since they've launched, there's been a few different ones. Draft Shares is one. It's like fantasy, but it's like FriendTech mixed with fantasy. It's kind of interesting. There's like Base Paint, which has been kind of cool. And I'll explain that one in a second. It's actually very interesting. And Jesse from Coinbase or from Base talked about it a lot. But the real big reason is, one, we're already seeing it. Two, Base is pushing this big time. Now, why are they pushing this? We saw a tweet when we were at the conference. Jesse tweeted out and he said, hey, anyone who's working on a consumer app for crypto, please DM me. I want to help you and share the things that I've learned with FriendTech, et cetera. He got over 300 DMs in like a couple hours when we were all there at the conference. And he was like, holy shit, I got to go and manage all my DMs now for yourself. But he talked about, I was at not an after party, but like a meeting after the conference where about 30 of us got together, and Jesse got up and he was just talking about his sort of priorities with Coinbase right now and what Base's number one priority is. And the number one thing was helping more consumer apps come on chain. So that's their main focus. Then it was like decentralized Base further and a couple other things, but their main focus right now is how do we get more on-chain consumer apps on chain? So if that's Coinbase's number one priority, we're pretty sure they're going to make that happen, right? And they're really helping these apps do it. Why? Because they're making a shit ton of money from any of these apps that go live on there, which is a really big deal.
Yeah, we know they've already made over $500,000 in profit from FriendTech alone. That was the number, a week and a half ago. I'm sure that number has gone up considerably since then because FriendTech's been on a tear, although it has come down back to earth a bit over the weekend. Okay, let's talk about some more about these specific on-chain consumer apps that we think are coming. You mentioned a few there. Can you tell us a little bit? You mentioned one that you wanted to
Base Paint was interesting. This just isn't really possible anywhere else. And Jesse was talking about it at the conference again. So Base Paint, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically this like application where anyone can go. And so each day they make a new painting. Okay. And each pixel, someone can just connect their wallet and then they can paint that pixel basically. Right. And let's say there's, I don't know, 500 people that get together to make that one painting, and then it mints, and then anyone can go and mint that painting whenever it's done as an NFT, and they can pay whatever it is that you would pay to get it. And then what happens is everything that's made from minting or purchasing that one piece of painting, the amount that's earned is then separated and shared amongst everyone who is involved. So let's say they make $100 on that one painting, or it's done in ETH. So let's say it's 1 ETH. Then that 1 ETH is split up and distributed amongst those 500 people that were a part of it. And this is happening every 24 hours on Base right now. Every 24 hours, a new painting is minted. And I forget the numbers of how much has been made, but it was like a relatively decent amount, like something getting close to like 100 ETH or something that had been made for creators. So a fun kind of thing where like a community can get together and make a painting and then kind of sell it. And it just, you can't do that in Web 2 because it's just micropayments, a lot of it, right? But again, just it can happen because fees are so cheap that this does work. And like, weird thing, does that go mainstream? No, absolutely not. But it's just a cool thing that can happen because it's on chain that could not happen otherwise. So really, really interesting thing that I've seen there. And in terms of other apps, I mean, we've got Farcaster and Lens, which are, of course, you know, doing well. Farcaster really starting to pick up. This is social media that we're seeing on chain. There's whatever you call it, GambleFi, so like more like casino type stuff that's happening on chain. There's, like I said, a lot of fantasy football type stuff that seems to be coming along. And then, you know, the friend tech craze, who knows what's going to go on that. But any type of utility is all going to go on chain now. And these would be all considered consumer facing apps.
We're also seeing gaming really taking off with Parallel. Gaming's getting a lot of talk right now, but most of these games are actually still in beta, right?
Yeah.
Parallel isn't even open yet. There's only a few thousand people playing it. We had Kolosh, the founder, on the show last week. Go back and listen to that if you want to learn more about that. But there's only a few thousand people playing it right now, but everybody's talking about it. So like that's going to open up later this year.
Well, you want to talk about an app that can blow this thing up? It's Parallel. So they have what's the other game that they're making that we talked
Colony.
about? Colony, where there's AIs playing in this like game, this metaverse world. And when they have ideas, like for in one instance, the one AI that he was talking about made tea leaves, and he started minting those tea leaves as NFTs and selling them to other AIs in the game. And so there's thousands of NFTs being minted on Base that aren't even happening from humans. They're happening from AIs inside of a game.
It's crazy. Then we have NFL Rivals, like that's another game. And here's the thing, NFL Rivals is a mobile game. Parallel is a PC-based game right now. NFL Rivals, you play that on your phone, and we've already seen, remember, Google Store is now allowing NFTs in the App Store or the Google Play Store. So is Apple going to follow? Like, again, this comes back to these infrastructure things that are going to allow just more mobile consumer apps, which is such a key piece as well. Like, think about FriendTech right now. You actually don't download it through the App Store. You download it by going to a website. It's like such a janky way to do it, right? So those things work.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the big thing to understand really is that these things are now possible. And so what's going to come from it? Who knows? I could have never predicted Base Paint. Probably no one could predict FriendTech, right? But look, these apps, I think the thing I'm realizing with Onchain is that a lot of these things are going to be speculative, but they're going to be speculative plus some sort of fun or utility or whatever, right? And sometimes people get afraid of that. I even myself, I know that sometimes I kind of shy away from that because I'm like, oh, well, the world doesn't want speculative stuff, but like, actually the world kind of does. You know what I mean? Like, not always speculative on finance in terms of like speculative on a stock. Not everyone in the world likes that. But people do like to speculate on other things, whether that be like fantasy football, whether that be gambling or sports or music or tickets. Like, there's always some sort of speculation that happens in some different areas. And what on-chain apps allow you to do is take anything in the world and add a little bit of speculation to it. And one of the terms that kept getting used by Jin Lee was speculation plus, right? So like, speculation is a good thing, but it can't just be speculation, right? That'll only get us so far. But on-chain consumer apps will be speculation plus, which is what FriendTech is. It's a group chat, right, with someone that has some sort of knowledge somewhere. And so you buy to get into that group chat. There's the utility, but then there's some speculation with it, which you could buy to get the utility, but then also you might make some money off of it, right? And I mean, that's exactly what fantasy football is. It's speculation plus. It's fun. You get to compete against other people, but then you're speculating and maybe you're going to win some money while you do it. And blockchains just are a way better piece of tech to have speculation plus.
I mean, I love that term, Kai. Speculation plus, definitely going to start using that. Loyalty is the other one that comes up for me, right?
Yeah.
Why do we love loyalty on chain? Because it's going to be the first time that you can actually buy, sell, trade your loyalty points, whereas you can't do that. And that's speculation plus right there, right? Like same loyalty program, I still get rewards, but I can also speculate on them by buying the points or by selling them if I want out.
Right. And speculation just brings more virality to it, right? So doesn't mean that everyone's going to care about speculation, but there's a lot of people that do. And so we just got to find new ways of adding speculation into different things that people care about.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. Next up, second trend that we're seeing is real world assets are really moving on chain. Kai, what are you seeing here? Also tell us what real world assets are moving on chain.
Yeah. So this was a big moment at the conference when everyone kind of was like, oh, I get it now. It was the top. So you had Rob Leshner, who is the founder of Compound and now the founder of, I think it's called Superstate. We had Stani, the founder of Aave and Lens, Kane, the founder of Synthetics, and the COO of Uniswap. So the biggest DeFi protocols, all there for like a panel together talking about DeFi. It was quite interesting. And at one point, Rob Leshner just kind of said, you know what, I'm going to throw a bucket of water on everyone and just wake you guys up to something. And he goes, the institutions, they're not coming. They're not using DeFi. And everyone's just like, what? And he just kind of like sat there for a second. I was like, okay, that was weird. And he's like, but they're not using DeFi because they don't like DeFi. They're using it. They're not using because they don't like our assets. He's like, they love DeFi. They think it's a super cool thing. You know, putting assets on chain and being able to like permissionlessly do things with them makes the most sense. It's the amount of fees that institutions pay to get assets that are in a different country than they're in is just unbelievable. And then you have the delays and the restrictions. And he's like, they love DeFi. They think DeFi is the best, but they just don't like ETH and Bitcoin. And he's like, and all the other shit coins that exist out there. He's like, they don't care to buy some random coin that some protocol launched 24 hours ago in their mom's basement. He's like, they're never going to buy that. One, for regulatory concern, and two, they're just way smarter that they're just never going to do that because it's stupid. It's literally what he said. And then he was like, but you know what they do want on chain is their own assets. What they care about is things like bonds and equities and real estate and treasuries, et cetera. He's like, these are the things that they know and they love, and they're going to continue to use no matter what stupid assets we create on chain. But if we can put those things on chain, then they're definitely going to use things like MakerDAO and Synthetics and other different protocols. And so basically his thesis is we are going to see a massive, massive influx of real world assets that are going to move on chain because they're just treated better on chain. People can do more with them and it's cheaper and more and faster and settles quicker, et cetera. So like it's a better world for assets to be on chain than to be off chain. And so he thinks that, and I mean, we're already seeing this accelerate like crazy. We talked about it in the Eyes on Chain event for our pro subscribers, I think a couple of weeks ago. It went from like basically zero at the beginning of this year to like, I think we're probably over 2 billion in real world assets on chain now. So like it's going nuts. He predicted that in the next 12 months, we'll have 100 billion assets on chain. And he's like, yeah, he's not just some random dude that just like makes up numbers. Like he is one of the most successful founders in our entire industry twice over, right? Like this guy's an OG who's really gets it and is speaking with all the institutions. So like he obviously knows what he's talking about. So that was pretty like a big wow moment, I thought. And then the other reason that this is happening right now is interest rates are at, you know, whatever they are, over 5% kind of thing. And so a lot of people are choosing to invest in treasuries and in money markets, right? Because for once, finally, you can make some good money in that, right? And so there's real yield in the world. There was not real yield for the last decade, essentially, except for in DeFi summer in 2020, but most people got rugged. So now you have yield that people want these assets again. And so those are moving on chain like crazy because now you can get your yield and then go and do some, you know, different, like take loans against it. You can do all these different things with DeFi. So that is becoming a massive, massive thing. And I think is going to be, or already is a big driver of moving these assets on chain because people want that yield, but they want it on chain because they can do more things with it. So we're just kind of set up. And then now there's enough apps and the infrastructure again is there that the stuff can come on chain and we can actually, it works, right? If it came on chain when, you know, 3 years ago when Ethereum, or 2 years ago when Ethereum was $100 for a transaction, I mean, they still might use it, to be honest, because they're doing things of hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars. but the infrastructure is now there for this to make more sense for them. And the apps are there. They don't necessarily have the regulatory stuff there yet. That's still the main concern. Some of the DeFi apps are creating different liquidity pools. One's for just institutions that are KYC'd only, and then some for like the retail people, because they can't necessarily play around with just random liquidity that they don't know whose it is. So like the apps have been building those over the last couple of years. And so it's at a place now where institutions can actually come in and put their stuff on chain and do things with it, which is pretty cool.
Super exciting. And it makes so much sense. Like, I think that's the biggest thing is the institutions are not denying blockchain. They are denying our tokens, our assets, the way, and why? Because they have a lot to lose, right? If they start to use our assets, they lose a big chunk of their fees and their revenue model, right? So the incumbents of any new tech are always going to try to do it their way to maintain their profit, right? So it makes total sense that we're seeing that.
Well, and also like, I think finally some of us in the industry are coming to our senses and just looking at the reality of things and going, you know what, like Bitcoin, ETH as a payment, stupid, right? Bitcoin, ETH as a thing to use as collateral, stupid, right? Like, look at how many companies blew up as a result of that, because these things are so volatile, right? Now, look, I'm not saying they're stupid assets. I love ETH. It's my favorite asset in the world, and I buy lots of it every single month. But you buy ETH and Bitcoin. I mean, one, if you're, someone in a place that just can't access other assets, then you do it out of necessity. But for the most part, you're probably going to buy a stable coin as a result of that, now that those exist. But you buy this stuff to grow your wealth, not to maintain your wealth. And most institutions have billions of dollars, and they're trying to grow their wealth, but they're not trying to take all the risk in the world. They're trying to keep their wealth and like get their 5% or whatever, their 5 to 10%. And so like holding ETH and Bitcoin is probably not the way to do that. It's quite a risky thing, even though, of course, all of us in the space, we believe and we think it's inevitable that it's going to go. And so we do it. But most people, they're not going to do that, right? And so real world assets, though, on chain makes complete sense to them. And then when we get to crypto payments, same thing. Bitcoin, ETH, those weren't going to be, or at least aren't any in the near future, a good option for payments. Let's be realistic here. That's just insanely volatile. Why would anyone ever use that, right? And so again, we need to come back to reality and go, oh, stable coins, there's our way to make payments, right? And so institutions, same thing. We're not going to use your assets. We're going to use our own, and then we'll put them on chain, which is great.
Okay, you're getting ahead to crypto payments. Before we get to our third trend here of crypto payments, just want to wrap up the real world assets moving on chain by pointing out two things that we've talked about over the past month that have happened. One was last week, Citigroup announced that they are launching their own private blockchain because they want to use blockchain to move their clients, their institutional clients' money. Basically, you're a large enterprise, you need to pay millions of dollars to your manufacturer in China. Well, right now, to move that money to China, to their bank account, it's going to take a week. It's going to have a lot of fees. Citigroup's like, no, we're going to do this on chain, but they're not going to use our blockchains. They're not going to use public decentralized blockchains. They're going to build their own blockchain. So you can already see it's happening real world assets, but it's happening on their terms. Also, we saw London Stock Exchange announce that they are looking to launch their own blockchain to bring their over $4 trillion in assets that are currently on London Stock Exchange. They want to bring those on chain as well. So there is so much happening in this space.
I still bet that both of those end up on top of Ethereum and not their own chain. I think their chain.
Hot take right now from Kai. Okay, let's move into the third trend, crypto payments. Kai, crypto payments was sort of like, that was the goal at the beginning of all this, right? Like you go back to the Satoshi white paper, that was what we all started with, was a better way to move money. Why are we only talking about crypto payments now? Sort of give us a bit of a history lesson.
Yeah, there was a really good presentation from the founder of what's called Beam app, who gave us the history of this and kind of sort of talked us through this. Like when the white paper came out, the whole idea was peer-to-peer payments online, right? The problem was that Bitcoin just didn't really do a good job of that because it was too slow, it was too volatile, and you had to pay these gas fees. And so like it didn't really work for payments. You could never do it for like buying coffee. And I don't know why everyone goes with the coffee example, but that's just what we do. But it was never going to work for that. And Bitcoin ended up becoming this like store of value asset, hedge against inflation. And sort of that's where it found its product market fit, was digital gold. And so that didn't really work. Ethereum launched with smart contracts, and Ethereum also not a good form of payments, again, too volatile, et cetera. And so there was a lot of innovation that was needed, infrastructure that needed to be built on top of blockchain before payments could exist. And it went, you had blockchains, okay, wasn't good enough though. Then you had smart contracts. Ethereum still wasn't a good version of it. We had stablecoins, but on Ethereum mainly. So, to pay for your coffee, that's $1. You got to spend $3 in gas. It makes 0 cents, of course, right? So people didn't really want to do that. And then people didn't want to hold stablecoins because you couldn't make any yield off it. So then we needed DeFi. DeFi came, and now, okay, I can hold my cash and I can get some yield off it by putting it in Aave. So that sort of helped on the innovation side. Then we had layer 2s come around, which allowed us to make transactions for much cheaper. But again, still clunky. You got to get this MetaMask wallet. You got to bridge over. So still not that great for payments. Now we have account abstraction. This is what we talked about in the very beginning, which is account abstraction puts it all away. And if you've used the Beam app, which is a great example, it's you sign up for this app and just it's immediately, you can just start sending money back and forth from others with it through a URL link. So I can copy the link, send that in a text message, someone clicks it and boom, the money's over there, right? All happening on top of an L2, account abstraction. So your wallet, you just feels like it's like a PayPal account almost. And so it's removed a lot of pain points. It's still not perfect, right? We still have some issues of, well, how do you get the money to there? Do you got to bridge it? There's a bit of weirdness there, but it took all of this sort of innovation to get to the point where now payments can happen, and they can be cheap, and they can be fast, and they can look very similar to a Web 2 app. And so we're finally sort of reached that point. Interestingly, that it happened on top of Ethereum and not on top of Bitcoin, which was this was the main idea for it. But again, this idea that, hey, we needed a reality check and go, look, we're not going to use our ETH and Bitcoin assets for payments. Instead, we're going to use a stablecoin. We're going to use the US dollar, but we're just going to put it on chain because it's cheaper, it's faster, it settles immediately, it's permissionless, there's no restrictions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's interesting how the speed of innovation is a big part of what is allowing all this to happen. And I want to get to talking about that in a second. But before we do, you mentioned Beam app. Who else should we be watching when it comes to crypto payments?
Yeah, well, PayPal first. I didn't include them in the list, but PayPal definitely, they're launching their own stablecoin. They already have this. So the infrastructure is there. But just before I went on vacation there, Grab, which is like your Uber Eats kind of thing, but over in Southeast Asia, they just launched a account abstraction wallet inside of their app, 181 million users. Telegram has a wallet on Ton, which is their own blockchain, I guess, 800 million users. You can now send, I don't know if it's USDC, but USDT for sure, whatever the token is, but you can just send it right in the app itself. Opera, which is like a browser, they have 350 million users, and they have now an app. It's only in, I think, some certain places in Africa, but it's a test. But they have an app right in the browser, right? Which is, again, same thing for payments. And so this is just happening more and more and more. Even Coinbase wallet with XMTP, you can send money right in messaging within your wallet. So this is the tech is now there for this. And I think we're going to see this just accelerate so fast in the next year. The key thing I'm seeing from this is blockchains have finally found product market fit. And it's found it in 3 areas, right? It's crypto payments, real world assets. These are for sure a thing because they make both of those better. And then now finally, it looks like we're probably gonna have on-chain consumer apps too, because apps are also just better on-chain because it gives speculation side of it, as well as the permissionless, the interoperability, you can do so much more. And so I think we've finally had product market fit on blockchains, which is really cool.
So exciting. The crypto payments thing, once you experience it, I never want to send money any other way again.
Oh my God.
I right now, Kai, you can probably relate to this story. Both Kai and I have properties that we rent out. Kai, I don't think you're allowed to rent yours on Airbnb anymore because you're Strata, but I still rent mine on Airbnb. And I've got a guy right now that's been there for almost 2 months, and he wants to extend. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to do it off Airbnb. I'm going to get him to pay me directly so I can cut out the fee. And he lives in the US. So I'm like, hey, can you send me some money, right? And for him to send me, as an American, to send a Canadian money, it's so difficult. And because it's thousands of dollars, the fees are also high. So I literally was like, hey, man, do you use crypto? Can you send me stablecoin?
I always do that.
He doesn't. So, yeah. But, it's so obvious.
I was just in Portugal for a week. Well, I was in the US, then in Portugal. And I have an American credit card, and then I have a credit card for Europe as well, that I had to go through all the trouble of getting them just to save myself on some fees. Because if I was to use my Canadian one in the US or in Europe, then I get all these additional fees every time I do it to switch currencies. And it's like, oh my God, like if I just had crypto payments, I can just use USDC and I don't ever have to think about any fee ever. It just works everywhere. It's so much better. It's one of those things where it's so obvious once you've used it. Like if you're in it and if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably done something with crypto. If you haven't, go buy our investing masterclass course and you'll see how much better it is. It's just such a game changer for the world to have crypto payments.
Well, and that's the other thing we didn't even mention that is also both MasterCard and Visa are both actively building on blockchains,
Right.
because they also recognize, and that's going to solve exactly what you're saying, Kai. We'll still use our same credit cards, but now we'll use our Visa credit card will settle using USDC rather than US dollars or whatever other currency we want. So yeah, I guess Gnosis Pay as well. They have their debit card that allows you to do that. The list goes on and on. Okay, Kai, to wrap up here, one thing I think I just really want to make sure our listeners understand is if you're new to the space, or even if you're not new to the space, I think a lot of people often, NFTs are dead. Crypto is a scam. It's not happening. We see all these headlines all the time because to a lot of people, it's been a decade and we haven't achieved anything yet, right? But I think what most people are missing, and this is an exciting headline from a media standpoint, is the tech is accelerating at tremendous speeds. People just aren't seeing that because, again, it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning. We have to build this infrastructure first. And nobody's going to talk about infrastructure to mass media or to mass consumers. They don't care about that the same way they didn't care about the internet. If you think about with the internet, the biggest apps didn't come in the first basically 15, 20 years of the internet. They actually came, say the internet started like mid 80s, really took off in the 90s. But the biggest apps, the biggest websites were built in the early 2000s, right? So it takes about, 10 to 20 years until that point.
Well, and most people didn't come on the internet because people just were like, you should go on the internet because it's cool. Do you know what I mean? Like it was an app came that had a use case that just made someone's life easier. And that's what we need with crypto is we just need crypto and Web3 to have use cases that just aren't possible without it. And it makes someone's life better. And that's exactly what we're getting. We're getting real world assets for institutions. It makes their life better. So they're onboarding. Crypto payments makes a hell of a lot of people's lives better all around the world. And that's why we're seeing probably the most adoption right now is happening with crypto payments and stablecoins. So of course it's happening. And then look, consumer apps probably not making mainstream's life better yet, but I think we'll see it soon. I mean, just base paint, for example, if you're into artistic things and you like to make content online, like there was a way to make some money and you can do it every 24 hours with a bunch of people that you couldn't do in the Web2 world. Look, is that the big app? No. But again, it allows for something that's just not possible elsewhere. So we're going to see on-chain consumer apps that are just way better than, non-on-chain ones. And so that will bring people on. They'll deal with getting a wallet. They're like UX, we always get caught up in UX. And like, yes, we need UX to improve, which we talked about a lot, but it's not going to be perfect ever. There's still going to be some things that people have to jump through, just like there still is today with the internet. You still have to go and get an internet connection to use it. You still got to get a device that can connect to the internet. There's still pains in signing up with your Wi-Fi and getting a password and like doing these things. So like there's still not a perfect UX by any means, but people do it because it makes your lives better. And so that's what we need here with Web3. And I think we've got 3 pieces of product market fit, which is really exciting. And I think that's going to drive out. And then we didn't even touch on games, but that's going to drive just so many people now.
I love it. On-chain is better than online. I'm going to leave you guys with that today because there's just no doubt. Can't deny it. It is inevitable. It is happening. These 3 trends, we'll be watching them closely, keeping you guys up to date. I do want to know, if you guys are listening to this episode, let us know which of these 3 trends you're most interested in because they are to different builders because we're trying to figure out which ones we should make sure that we make playbooks for you on, right? Should we focus more on-chain consumer apps? Should we focus more on real-world assets? So let us know which of these 3 trends you're most interested in. Vote in the poll if you're listening on Spotify. Remember, this week, 33% off our investment course. You can now buy it with your crypto. So grab it before that deadline in a week from now and get, as Kai said, use your crypto to buy a course that is going to teach you how to make more crypto. It is just a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? Thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Have yourselves a great day.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy, your one trusted source to capitalize on the next big phase of the internet. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and subscribe or follow so that you don't miss the next one. While you're at it, there's a link in the description for our free newsletter where we provide timely and relevant Web3 insights so you can confidently build and invest in Web3. Make sure to subscribe today. One final note. This podcast is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Crypto and Web3 are risky, and you should never invest more than you're willing to lose. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.